Good morning, everyone. I wanted to give you a quick update on Rusty and Ruby. They've been with me for a little while now, so I'm pretty used to handling them, and they seem to be doing quite fine. So let's begin with Rusty, who's a little bit bigger than Ruby, and he is basically a common Brooksi Florida kingsnake. He has a lot of yellow, of course the black, but he's got that little bit of orange on him, which is why his nickname is Rusty. Now, Brooks Kingsnakes get to be about 6 feet max. They average about 4 to 5, and of course they're king snakes, so they eat just about anything they can get their mouths on. That includes birds, eggs, lizards, all the rodents like mice, rats, gophers, whatever. But what makes them special is that they eat other snakes. They're naturally immune to rattlesnakes and a few other venomous snakes, but the big thing is the rattlesnakes. The bad thing is that they also eat their own kind, so king snakes are not off the menu. Therefore, Rusty and Ruby have never met. So the breeding makes it very interesting. You have to be very careful that the brumation went properly. Brumation's a little bit different than hibernation in the sense that they never really fall asleep. Like a bear hibernates over the winter, so they get enough calories so they can actually sleep the whole winter. Where snakes and other reptiles, they brumate, which means they have enough calories just to kind of chill out, but they don't fall asleep. Now, what's the big deal about that? Something to do with the brumation activates the breeding cycle. And during that breeding cycle, you can put the male and female together, and if you don't watch them, one of them's going to eat the other. So you have to be careful to watch them and make sure that the behavior is appropriate for breeding and not eating. Anyways, this is Rusty. Now Ruby is a little bit smaller. I think it's just the age, because actually the females get bigger than the males. Now her colors are the same, yellow and black, but instead of that little orange color is that higher kind of red, which is what I was looking for in my project. I want to have hatchlings with this red color, and hopefully I can intensify them by eventually having 2 high red, male female, and then breeding them together. That should create a super red. Well, it depends. If this high red is a recessive gene, then the only ones that will show the high red are the ones that have 2 recessive genes, one from the male, one from the female. If this high red is a dominant gene, then all it takes is for one gene to be present to show the high red. But if you have both, one from the male, one from the female, and it's dominant, then it's called a super dominant, and it becomes a very intense red. So I'm curious what's going to happen when Rusty and Ruby actually breed, because he doesn't have this high red. So if I'm correct, and the high red is a recessive, they're all going to look like him, but have the genes from her. If it's dominant, they're all going to look like her. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Now, do I prefer one over the other? Of course not. They're both king snakes and they're very interesting creatures. Do I like this high red? Yes, I do. She's fascinating. But because she has a high red, she doesn't have this yellow, this bright yellow. So they both have their positives and negatives, and I'm very curious how this is going to work out in the end. Once I get this project going, I wouldn't mind having a king snakes with high red and high yellow. That would be very, very cool. There's also some with genetics that have lacking yellow and red, so it just looks very black. I think it's called anorexic, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's lacking the reddish color. Then of course your classics, which no pigment, which is albinos. Then you have some weird morphologies where their patterns only show on the top, but the sides are white. They're called white-sided. That's interesting. And then you have other mixtures, but I'm starting small. I want to see what this guy looks like with her as a breeding pattern. Anyways, as you can see, they're very, very chill. King snakes are very calm. They have a pretty intense eating behavior though. You just put the mice in there and they pretty much go after it. So give it another year, year and a half, and I'll start thinking about how I'm going to brumate these two. I hear for king snakes, because they come from Florida, or at least these come from Florida, you kind of have to drop the temperature down to the 50s. And the only way to really do that here in North Carolina is a wine cooler. So I hear that you can get the wine cooler, modify it so it's flat instead of that curve for the bottles, the wine bottles, and then you put the snakes in their container in the wine cooler under 55 degrees, if I remember correctly, and you have to control that environment for 3 months. Brumation lasts 3 months. Then once you remove them, you put them back in their temperature up to 85, and then put the male with the female and have the breeding. Then of course the second part is the eggs. You have to incubate them. So not only do I have to buy a wine cooler to brumate the two snakes, but I have to somehow set up an incubator to keep the eggs in the proper temperature and humidity just to get the little hatchlings. So it's an interesting project, and I'm definitely having fun with it. Alright everybody, I just wanted to keep you updated. Everything seems to be going well, and they're definitely eating. So wish me luck, and I'll keep updating all of you. Thank you.